Hello, hello, hello. I hope that you all are having an absolutely amazing day. I have some amazingness, some super dopeness, some things that I really want to share. Anyone who knows me and who's been following me for some time knows that I'm a huge advocate for transparency, for honesty, because I believe that my journey can create breakthroughs for other people. And more importantly, it can let other people know that they're not alone when they're struggling with something. So I struggled with achievement addiction. If you read the title, you probably already know that it's going to be about that. And I'll tell a little bit about my journey, but I'm going to talk about why I decided to share that today. So the reality is I was actually scrolling last night and there was a woman who was sharing about how she was so overwhelmed, so consumed, and so exhausted with chasing success, like the American dream idea of success. And that inspired me to dig deep and start talking about my own journey to achievement addiction, because I felt like I saw her struggle. I saw the comments of other people saying that they can relate to it, that it really resonates and all those things. And so I was like, okay, that's my cue. Like, here it is. People need to hear this. And so understand that this message is from a place of service. It's not from a place of like sympathy at all, because I've been able to recover from it. But I'm going to share, I'm going to be very transparent and dive in. Let's dive in. Like, no need to tiptoe around it. So growing up, I lived in a household with just my mom and my brother. My mom started dating a guy around the time I was 5, and she dated him for quite some time. I'd probably say almost a decade, and then they decided that they wanted to get married. Now, at the time, I didn't understand why I didn't necessarily want them to get married. He wasn't bad to me or anything like that. I just felt this like tug that it shouldn't happen. And fast forward a few years after their marriage, things started to get really crazy. There was some physical abuse, about 2 occasions to be specific. And more than that, there was a crap ton of verbal abuse. And it was difficult. It was very difficult because the verbal abuse was often placed on me. I was told things like I would never accomplish anything. To be very transparent, my father's in prison. And so he would say, oh, you have inmate in your blood. And so these were thoughts and scenarios that I took in as a teenage girl, kind of almost adopting them like they were my life. And so as I continued to get older, that voice, while the physical abuse took place, I don't mean to minimize that. It was very difficult, but that verbal abuse really stayed in the back of my mind. It was something that I cycled through. It was something that I was constantly referencing. It was something that I would constantly review, like, oh my gosh, like, am I going to be enough? And we already deal with a lot of limiting beliefs from the way society phrases and imposes things for us in general. So, and that was a really big challenge for me. Needless to say, fast forward a few years, how that challenge really manifested in my life was achievement addiction. For me, it felt like no matter what I did, it wasn't enough. I could get a degree, I could have a baby, I could get married, I could do all the things, but it just didn't feel like the achievements that I was accomplishing were of any value. And so it took a long time for me to get to that point of recognizing it. But simply put, achievement addiction is where you become so consumed in this concept that you have to prove or achieve something and let people see your value, let people see that you've achieved something. And more importantly, you have a hard time acknowledging or bringing it in like you've done something of value. Another telltale sign of achievement addiction is that you're achieving things at the cost of losing other things. So you become a workaholic at work at the cost of losing the intimacy with your spouse, or you become a workaholic at work and then your kids feel ignored or whatever it may be. And so this is the definition of achievement addiction. But for those that are new to achievement addiction, let's talk about like what that looks like. So it may be that you create rest as a reward instead of your right. It may be that you're working really, really long hours and never feeling good enough. It may be that you're so consumed and tied to your never ending to-do list and you're using all of these hacks and tricks because you feel like you can't conquer it any other way. It may be that other people are saying like, dude, you got a ton of energy. You got a lot going on. Like, slow down, be still. Like, everything will be okay. It could be a lot of those things. But for me, my telltale sign was that I was never slowing down enough to appreciate what it was that I accomplished. And even when other people would applaud me or tell me it was great, it felt impossible for me. It felt like, okay, well, that's what I'm supposed to do. Even I remember like getting my doctorate degree and everyone was like, whoa, like, do you know only 3% or 1% or whatever the statistic is of people that have it? And for me, I'm like, okay, whatever. What's the next thing that I can accomplish? And it wasn't even for applause. it was constantly trying to prove myself. It was constantly feeling tied into achievement addiction. And the crazy part is, as I started to experience this and really be able to put a word to it, really be able to put a phrase to it, really be able to understand it, I realized that quite a few people struggle with achievement addiction. Now, there's a couple different reasons that we struggle with achievement addiction. One of the main culprits for achievement addiction is social media. If I can just be really honest, we hop on social media and we see everyone's highlight reels. We see what they're doing, what they're not doing, what they're accomplishing, how they're traveling, how they got married, how they had a baby, how they started a business, how they got a degree, how they got a certification, how they did all these things. And then we see their highlight reels and we just accept it and acknowledge it like, oh my gosh, this is what's normal. This is what we're supposed to do. And so for us, we feel like we're one step behind. We feel like we're struggling. We feel like we should be doing more. So that's one reason we have achievement addiction. Another reason that people struggle with achievement addiction is a lot of times they're running from things, right? When you're dealing with a difficult scenario or situation or toxic emotions or overwhelming emotions, a lot of times if you dig your heels in to what you're working on, you don't even have to worry about what's happening there. That's why a lot of people become workaholics, because they're running from things that are happening in their house. They're running from their unhappy marriage or their difficult child, teenager, or whatever it may be, because we're running from difficult emotions instead of trying to actually dig deep and be able to process them, dig deep and be able to see, like, where is this emotion coming from? Why am I feeling this emotion? Why is it overwhelming me? Like, all those things. And so that's another reason that we deal with that achievement addiction. Also, another really true reason behind achievement addiction is conditioning. So the reality is we are sold this American dream, this one size fits all t-shirt dream that you're supposed to have 2.5 kids, a white picket fence, a house, a dog, a nice, doting spouse, and a cat. And you're supposed to, get a nice job, make 60 to 80K a year, and retire in 60 years. And when we're not achieving something in line with that, we're constantly looking for that next addiction. We're that achievement to fill or to feed that addiction. And if you think about it, the way society functions and operates, when you do something big, when you do something powerful, when you do something productive that other people applaud you for, you now internalize that like you're a part of your addiction. You're a part of your achievement. You're a part of that, the piece of that. And so for you, you're like, this is how I identify. Your identity becomes wrapped in this. But here's what I need you guys to understand. Just like any other addiction, a gambling addiction, a sex addiction, pornography addiction, a social media, a phone addiction, or any money addiction, any other drug addiction, whatever, any other addiction you can think of, achievement addiction is very similar in the sense that you can keep feeding that addiction by continuing to accomplish things, but you'll never feed it and never feels good enough. And that's, like I said, was my telltale sign, because I went from getting my bachelor's, then it was my master's, then it was my doctorate, and every achievement still just, I didn't feel whole because I hadn't really addressed the piece of me that was tied to that had made that part of my identity. And so it wasn't until I started to do my own research and I started to dig deep to, one, understand I wasn't alone, that a lot of people struggle with this. Two, that there was a way to break free. And so today what I want to share is why I've become so passionate about this, because I think that more women need to know that it exists, that this happens, that we struggle with this. But two, I become passionate about it because there is a way to break free of it. There is a way that it doesn't need to take over your life. There's a way to make achievement addiction something of the past and replace it with a healthy form of achievement. Because don't get me wrong, achievement is an amazing concept. You should want to achieve something. You should be looking towards the future. You should be looking for reasons to grow and progress and move forward. We should never be stagnant, but we have to do it in a healthy fashion. So today I'm going to share part of the journey that I walked through. This is so good. I'm going to be honest with you guys. I started writing notes on it because I didn't even realize that this is what I was doing at the time. And now it's the journey that I actually get to support and take my clients through to be able to create success on their own terms. Cool fact, but I did my dissertation research on the way in which women define success. Funny thing, right? At that time, I was dealing with this achievement addiction and just trying to seek success in a certain way. But I also was researching it, and really cool, but I interviewed and went in-depth, long-term interviews with 22 women, and not a single one of them had the same definition for success, which should have been a telltale sign to give me permission to say, I can let go of this one size fits all. I can let go of this achievement addiction. I can create success on my own terms. And so once I was able to comprehend that and really piece that all together, that's when I started to really move towards creating a healthy form of achievement. So let's break down how to break free of achievement addiction so it doesn't take over your life. Because if I can be really honest, it got to a point where it did almost take over my life, where all I was looking for was achievement at the cost of losing out on things that were actually really important and things that were actually valuable. So the first step to overcoming achievement addiction is to first identify what it is that you want to accomplish, but what it is that you want to accomplish on reasonable terms, okay? So for example, if you're like, all right, I want to achieve my doctorate, but you haven't even gotten your associate or your bachelor's, start small. Break those goals into bite-sized chunks and work on achieving that, right? Move slowly through that. I know for me, I struggled because I would always compare myself to these like $6 million coaches that were doing amazing, wonderful, magnetic things. And I'm like, why am I always a step? Because I was focused on the wrong thing, and I was trying to take this big elephant-sized goal and accomplish it like that, right? But there's the old saying, how do you eat an elephant? You eat an elephant one bite at a time. So that's how you create that first step, is you identify what it is you want to accomplish, but within reason. What is it that you want to accomplish that is within reason? Then what you're going to do is you're going to move into step number 2, which is creating milestones. What are the small milestones that can help you get to that goal? So how are you breaking that goal into bite-sized chunks? And more importantly, how can you acknowledge or celebrate each of those milestones? Because remember, a telltale sign of achievement addiction is sometimes it can be difficult to stop and celebrate it, stop and smell the roses, stop and like pat yourself on the back or give yourself a round of applause because you're so focused on what's that next step, what's that next thing. So what is the milestone that you can create, and how can you slowly but surely celebrate? So for me, I set a goal for the month of November to record a YouTube video every day for the month of November. And at the end of each week, I celebrated. I applauded myself. I awarded myself, because even though I hadn't hit the big target, I still was on the right track. And reminding yourself of that regularly is so important. Okay. Then we move in to step number 3, which is compare yourself to yourself. The biggest mistake you can make is you can look at someone else's highlight reels or their story or their journey and say, oh, well, they're so successful and this is what they're doing and this is what I should be doing. But you don't know what it took for them to get to this point. You don't know how long it's taken them to get there. You don't know what their struggles are. Half the time, we don't even know if what people share is true, right? And I don't mean to negate it, but sometimes that's the reality. I saw a meme online and it was so powerful. Like, I wish I took a screenshot, but I took a mental image of it. Basically, it was 2 swimmers and they're swimming in 2 different lanes, right? And they're racing. One swimmer had his eyes and his attention and his focus on the finish line, while the other swimmer had his eyes and attention and focus on the other swimmer. Now, let me ask you, who do you believe won the race? The person that won the race was the person who stayed in their own lane, who focused on their own unique target. This person over here that was worried about what this swimmer was doing was always a stroke or 2 behind, because they were focused on something that wasn't their target. This is what we have to understand with our own life. We have to stop comparing ourselves to somebody else's target, to somebody else's goals, to somebody else's progress, and focus on the progress that we're making and our own unique target, which was step number 1, right? Step number 1, identifying that target, but within reason. Step number 2, creating those milestones. Step number 3, comparing yourself to yourself, right? That's going to be so important. Then we move into step number 4, which is building boundaries. And I mean this in the best way, but you got to have boundaries with everything, everyone, including yourself. So a boundary may look like, I'm not going to work until 6 o'clock when I'm supposed to clock out at 4 o'clock, because I need to show up and be available and attentive and in the moment with my family. A boundary may look like, even if I accomplish my to-do list, I'm not going to start on my to-do list for tomorrow because I get to have free time. That's my reward for showing up and chasing down this lengthy to-do list today, right? Creating that boundary with yourself is so imperative, but also creating that boundary with other people, because you teach people how to treat you. When you're constantly trying to overachieve or overdo things, then people begin to recognize that and they may take advantage of you. A client of mine, she just recently got an amazing job, which she loved in the beginning, but they have started to take advantage of her because she overdid things to prove her value, to chase this achievement that she wanted so bad. So the person that had the position before her, they didn't work him like that. They didn't run him ragged, but for her, they do, because they see she's willing to stay until 9 o'clock at night. They see she's willing to be the first person there in the morning. They see that she's chasing these achievements. And so they give her these fake applauses of fake awards so that she's, continuing to show up that way, but she's on the brink of burnout. So in that situation, creating a boundary, saying, you know what, this is what I'm going to do. This is what's in my job description. This is where I stop. This is where I draw the line. For me, that was the hardest part, creating a boundary with myself. It's like I could create boundaries with everyone else, but with myself, I didn't know how to tell myself when to stop. So creating a boundary with yourself can be really challenging. But remember, you teach people how to treat you. When you set those boundaries in place, you create room for other people to learn how they need to treat you. Okay. The next thing is, with kind of weaved into that's a big piece of that, is creating balance in your life, right? So that kind of goes along with the boundary. If I pulled out your planner right now, I pulled out your schedule right now, you'd probably have 75 million things on this never ending to-do list. But when you create balance, you give yourself permission to free up time to take care of yourself. And so I use what's called a 3D system to be able to break free of this. And it's called delete, delegate, and do. That's what the 3D stand for, okay? Not like 3D like when you go to the movies, but the 3D system. So if you were to pull out your planner right now and reflect on your calendar, your schedule, and all the things you are doing, what on your calendar could you delegate? What on your calendar could you delete totally off? And what on your calendar could you just put on your plate because you know that you need to do it, but streamline it, meaning you're removing the things that don't matter and making room for the things that do. So let me give you a very tangible example. For me, I was always grocery shopping, and in the beginning of the pandemic, it was exhausting because then I would go to the grocery store, I'd bring home the groceries, I'd have to wipe them down. I'd have to get in the shower. I have to clean them off. It was like a 3-hour process. It was exhausting. So the first way that I delegated it was I decided to just get Instacart. I'm like, oh, Instacart's so dope. I don't have to go to the grocery store. Yeah, sure, I pay a tip, but I save money because I don't have hungry kids throwing things in the cart, and I'm not going there with an empty stomach. But then I took it a step further. I delegated in the sense that my kids are old enough to put groceries away. So when I would be working on something for my business, I'd have them put the groceries away. Why add that to my to-do list if I can delegate it, if I can get help, if I can get support with it, right? Another example for delete. For me, I was meeting with an accountability partner 2 times a week for 2 hours, twice a week. It wasn't necessary. So we decided together, collectively, we worked together and said, all right, well, we're going to delete one of our meetings and maximize the other meeting, because now that freed up 2 extra hours every single day or every single week for us to dedicate back into our business. And then after I delegated and deleted things on my planner, I created more room for me to do the things that actually mattered, right? The biggest mistake we make is we think that if we're busier, that we're actually more productive, when the two are totally, completely opposite terms. They mean absolutely, they're not even the same thing, not even at all. Because you could be busy all day and have nothing to show for it, or you could be productive and not be busy at all, right? They're 2 totally different terms. And when you use this 3D system and strategy that I've created, you create an opportunity for you to actually be productive, to actually showcase what you need, and to create that balance and remove that burnout that is actually taking over your life, okay? Then we move into the next step, which is to affirm yourself, reminding yourself that you are enough. We often come under this impression or this assumption that our accomplishments are what define us. And this is why a lot of women get stuck, because they define themselves based on being a wife. They define themselves based on having a degree. They define themselves based on their title at their job. Your accomplishments are here and you're here. They are two totally different things. So even if you lose your marriage, you still were a great wife, right? Even if you change your job, you were still a great employee. That doesn't negate it. It doesn't take it away. And we have to stop weaving these things together and saying that we're only valuable if we hold this title. We're only valuable if we do this thing. We only are valuable or worthy or deserving if we've accomplished this. You are still valuable just being yourself. So remind yourself of that. I would say I'm a valuable coach just by being me. I'm a life-changing coach just by operating in my energy. And this was a constant reminder that I didn't need a certain amount of money to highlight myself as a valuable coach. I didn't need a certain type of clientele to highlight myself as a valuable coach. I'm just a valuable coach simply by being me. So affirm yourself. Think of an affirmation that can remind you of your value, of your worthiness, even without a certain accomplishment, even despite whether or not you had success with the accomplishment that you tried to achieve, okay? Separate yourself from that. That goes along with that boundary piece, like really differentiate yourself, but affirm yourself and remind yourself of that value, okay? That's so important. And then we move into that last step, which is when you've accomplished what you set out to accomplish, celebrate yourself. Celebrate your success. Celebrate your dedication. Celebrate your efforts. Celebrate. Don't say, all right, I achieved this. Now, what's the next thing? And even sometimes people may ask you, what's the next thing? There is no next thing right now. I'm just enjoying the moment. Oh, my next thing will be this, but I'm taking a break until I go there. Take a moment and celebrate yourself. You're worthy of it. You put in the blood, sweat, and tears figuratively to work towards this. So celebrate yourself. You deserve it. Okay? So I'm going to repeat those steps back to you one more time so that you can really understand them. I have them listed because sometimes I can get them out of order. But the reality is I didn't want to miss a thing. I wanted to make sure you guys had the steps in the exact order that I went through and the exact order that I walk my clients through to let them know that they're valuable and they're worthy and they can still hold tight to healthy achievement, but they don't have to allow achievement addiction to take over their lives, okay? So that first step is identify the achievement that you want to accomplish within reason. The second step is to identify the milestones that will let you know that you're moving in that direction of you're moving in the right direction. The third step is to compare yourself to yourself only. That's it, nobody else. The fourth step is to really build in those boundaries that you need to succeed. The fifth step is to create more balance in your life and do away with that busyness and that burnout, right? The sixth step is to affirm yourself, reminding you that you're valuable with or without that accomplishment. And then the seventh step is to celebrate because you're worthy and you're deserving and you deserve to celebrate yourself, okay? The reality is I want you guys to understand that I am not at all here trying to tell you that achievements are bad and that you shouldn't want to achieve things. You should not be addicted to achieve things and you should be seeking ways to have a healthy form of achievement, nothing more and nothing less. And when you understand how to differentiate the two, you put yourself in a position to create the success that you desire and the success that you deserve. So I hope that this story and this journey was impactful for you. I hope that it helped you understand that you can get in control of your achievements. You can create achievements around what you want, but your achievements don't have to control your life or take over you. Use my story, use my systems and my strategies to work your way through it so that you can begin to work in the direction of the success that you want, but not getting so bogged down by the fact that you're addicted to it or not really able to celebrate or enjoy it. So if you know someone who can be blessed by this, maybe they're struggling with it. Maybe some of these signs resonated with you and you're like, yes, I see, a really good friend of mine. She just never celebrates her wins or whatever. Share this video because I do not believe that what we experience or what we go through is by accident at all. I believe what we experience and what we go through is an opportunity for us to educate and explore it with other people. And that's what my desire, my hope, and my aspiration was for tonight, was to be able to share this with you to help you get in control of the success that you want. So I hope that it helped you. I hope that this blessed you. And I thank you all for joining me today. I hope that you all have an absolutely amazing day. And I will check in and chat with you guys later. Bye, guys.